In this video, I'm going to be talking about 12 of the most common mistakes I see people making in Fortnite. Everyone makes mistakes while they play, so I analyzed a ton of gameplay to determine which mistakes people make the most. Whether you're an absolute beginner or a total pro, there's definitely something in this video that you do. The first mistake that I see tons of people doing is right after they get a big damage advantage. When you get a damage advantage and all you need to do is sneak a couple of SMG or AR bullets in to finish the fight, the best way is generally to get inside the box. While using exploits like a ramp over the head works well, sometimes they just aren't practical to set up. The big mistake I see a ton of people doing is just running into the wall with no exploit, just trying to get some bullets through. While with certain guns it is possible to bleed some bullets, most of the time it's just going to cause pressure until you need to reload, and then they're going to be able to get some heals off. The fix to this is learning how to momentum exploit. If you've ever watched a pro play, then you'll probably recognize this. The way they finish a ton of fights is by learning the timing of how to jump in a box without placing any builds, just using their momentum to walk straight through the wall or floor. This is kind of a hard skill to practice without getting a friend to just hold the wall for you, but I found a map that I'll leave in the description that just holds walls for you so you can practice jumping in boxes with momentum. Pre-fires are an excellent tool to get damage off without incurring too much risk. The main problem I see though is that people go for pre-fires while someone jumps in or takes a wall, and oftentimes instead of just getting the damage cleanly, they either end up with the person in their face or getting pumped before they can get out of the way of the wall that got taken. I know that this doesn't happen to everyone, but for me, on not super low ping, I find it kind of hard to react in time to block a shot after going for a pre-fire. The semi-obvious but underrated solution is to just peek your pre-fires. Rather than just sitting straight on your wall, you can set up a peek, and then when you go for the pre-fire, you are completely protected at no risk of being traded damage. Another little bonus tip I have for pre-firing is this little trick here. If you stand at exactly this part of the floor and place a ramp, you can make it yellow, and then if someone has your tops, you can shoot and crouch to get a pre-fire off and block their shot with a ramp. This is a minor mistake that I don't see happen often, but it's something that can be avoided altogether, and once you understand the properties of it, you can even use it to your advantage. When you have a ramp like this with the wall next to it, if you edit a 4-tile arch like this, you actually create a small gap right here. While this seems insignificant, you can actually shoot through it. The main mistake I see a lot of people making is that when they place and edit the wall after walking off a ramp, they leave a little gap open so they end up getting shot in the back. Once you understand the properties of this edit though, you can actually use it to your advantage, like how I did in that clip a second ago, or how Marius used it to secure his extremely high kill solo cash cup finals game. After he gets the guy low, he doesn't want to risk trading a shot and losing the game, so he makes that edit and finishes the fight like that. A recurring theme in a ton of gameplay I watch is this: making an edit that you think is a good peak without actually peeking it. Just because a peanut butter edit can create a very good peak doesn't mean that opening one by default gives you a better peak. You have to understand that every edit has its own application and can only be peaked by understanding not only your position but your opponent's position and sightlines. For example, a peanut butter peak is the same as editing open every tile if you stand right in front of the gap and your enemy is in front of you. However, if you stand to the left of the line of sight, then you can jump and get a good peek without getting return damage. On the other hand, if you open that exact same edit standing in front of it, but your opponent is sitting in the corner behind the wall, they won't be able to see you while you have a very good peek on them. This applies to every edit, not just the peanut butter. You have to account for both your positionings before you open any edit to make sure that you aren't exposing yourself. A ton of fights in Fortnite nowadays end up with a box fight. Someone starts aggressing someone else while they sit in a couple of boxes. An issue I see a ton of people doing is swinging on the same wall twice with their pickaxe. This is bad because it gives the person boxed up the perfect opportunity to open up an edit and pump you without doing anything about it. There are a couple different things you can do to avoid this. First off, you need to stop double swinging. If your opponent is aware of you, there's almost no good situation for pickaxing a wall twice in a row. Second off is making sure you have a build piece in between you and their build piece. If you place an edited wall between you and the wall that they're smacking on, if they open their wall to shoot you, you can instantly react by resetting your wall to block their shot. The last thing you can do to avoid this mistake is pulling your shotgun out between pickaxe swings. If you pull out your shotgun and go for a shot and reset, you can oftentimes pre-fire your opponent's edit and get free damage. The next big mistake I see a lot of people making comes when they're going for a pre-piece. Pre-piece means that you know where someone is going to walk or run to, and you use that information to pre-plan piece control that they will run into so that you can get them in a full box to eliminate them. The mistake is when people full 50-50 pre-piece people. Well, if they're super low and you're just trying to finish the fight, this is sometimes viable. Oftentimes, it's best to make a pre-piece from behind a safe peek. For example, instead of fully editing this wall and going for a side piece, you could edit a window and place the exact same piece but behind a wall and already have a peek set up to go for a shot. The next tip is to like and subscribe if you've been enjoying the video, and use code dollafn if you ever see the sunflower skin in the item shop. Nah, I'm just kidding. That's not a real tip, but if you do those things, they help me out a ton and I really appreciate it. The real tip number 7 is not editing with your blueprints out. I see tons of people editing with their guns and pickaxe out, and for what? Sure, it might look a little flashier and it might make your clips look a little cooler, but aside from that, there is no benefit to editing with anything but your blueprints out. The main advantage to blueprints blueprint editing is that it gives you more range, allowing you to edit from further away than if you had anything else out. Not only that, instead of having to click a completely random keybind to take a gun or pickaxe out, you only ever have to switch between builds, making edits faster and more consistent. Another huge advantage though is that when you go to reset your builds, you don't actually have to look at them. As long as you have your blueprint out and you're looking in the right tile with the right build selected, you can reset while looking at thin air. It's good to focus on certain things, but a huge mistake I see a ton of people making is tunnel visioning. Tunnel visioning is when you become extremely focused on a singular goal or task and do whatever it takes to accomplish it. The main drawback to this is oftentimes the means to accomplish the goal is sacrificing or neglecting other important factors of your game. An example of this would be like if you're an endgame and instead of just rotating to front side, you got super set on getting a single kill. You chase a single guy around the moving zones, and eventually, even though you do get the kill, it puts you in a super bad spot that ends up getting you killed. While getting a refresh is a good thing, you have to make sure that you're still thinking about other aspects of the game. That way you can balance out the pros and cons of your decisions while keeping everything in mind rather than one short-term goal. This is a super comp-centered example, but it applies to a ton of things in Fortnite and even in real life. The next huge mistake I see a ton of people making is not task sprinting whenever you get the chance to, and not optimizing your usage of task sprint. Whenever you're building, there's often dead times between when you actually need to be placing and editing builds. These times are just dead times, and instead of slowly walking up your builds during those times, it's important to make sure that you're task sprinting in any of those moments to maximize your time efficiency. And also, while you're rotating, make sure you utilize your task sprint to the max. This means sliding down slopes instead of using all your sprint, and jumping right before your sprint goes out and sliding while you wait for it to regen. Also, make sure that you're waiting for it to fully regen before you use it again. That way you don't get only a little bit, use a little bit, and then have to wait for it to recharge again. When you get shot at or cracked to low HP, everyone's first instinct is to build. And to heal, people make boxes. A huge problem that I noticed though is that people making boxes just don't expand enough. If you build more boxes, not only does it give you more space to play around yourself, but also if you're getting pressured super hard, it'll give you old boxes to go back to get your heals off since they'll be fully built. Oftentimes, I see people making only 1 or 2 boxes, and then once they get their wall taken or exploited in on, there's no recourse and there's nowhere left for them to go. In duos, it's even more important to box a lot because there will be 2 people aggressing from 2 different angles, so it's important to put as many builds between you and them as possible. Going back to the topic of pre-piece, we talked about how to pre-piece effectively, but on the defensive side of things, it's also super important to not get pre-pieced. The most effective way is to understand the psychology and positioning of your opponent. As for the positioning, for example, if they're smacking on your tops, it's extremely unlikely that they'll be able to drop down and pre-piece your bottom in time, so dropping down is your safest bet. If they're smacking on your front wall, then it's probably best to edit out the back since that's the box furthest from them. As for the psychology, you have to understand what most people think. If they slide a ramp in, most people will go for bottom piece, so the last thing you want to do is go down. And if you aren't sure if you're getting pre-pieced, edit a window and build a box from outside the window, and then if you see that they're pre-piecing that box, you can just reset the window and go out a different side. The final mistake I see a ton of people making is getting greedy and looting before the loot is safe. For example, if you jump into someone's box and kill them, the first thing you should be thinking about is breaking one of the walls to make your own box. If a third party comes and you're stuck looting on all the old builds, then you can get caught without anywhere to go. It's kind of hard to break the habit of not instantly looting as soon as you kill someone, but just try to instantly build a new box no matter what if you get a kill and are going to loot it. Thanks for everyone that made it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. No long outros. Bye.